Let's identify the 3 states that the Donald Trump campaign must absolutely flip this November to win the presidency. On your screen right now is a 2024 electoral college map filled in based on the results of the 2020 presidential race, except for the 14 states and 2 congressional districts that were all decided by less than 12 percentage points. We can safely consider these already colored in deep blue or deep red states to be safely aligned with either party. And so, for the purposes of this video, the Trump campaign should not be wasting any time or resources on any of them. They're not going to flip any of these solid Biden states, and they're not at risk of losing any of these safe Republican states either. In fact, all 36 of these safe states, plus the District of Columbia, have each voted for the same party in each of the last 4 presidential elections dating back to 2008, and a swing of 12 points or more from one election to the next is practically unheard of in modern politics, especially considering that 2024 is a rematch of the same matchup from just 4 years ago. Now, you have likely noticed that Donald Trump and the Republican Party are already at an electoral vote disadvantage here, down 122 to 191 in the electoral college counts. That's largely because of the deep blue states of California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, where Democrats have built up their voter bases and regularly win elections by 20 points or more. These 5 states account for 126 electoral votes between them, more than all of these 20 safe Republican states combined. That is just the lay of the land and where the people live. Republican voter bases tend to be more spread out across the middle of the country in states with smaller populations, and therefore fewer electoral votes. On a more positive front, though, for the Republican Party, the states of Alaska, Texas, Florida, Ohio, and Iowa, as well as Maine's 2nd congressional district, are all very likely to stay in the Trump column for a 3rd straight election in 2024, and they combine for 93 electoral votes, raising the former president's electoral count ahead of Biden now at 219 to 191. This Midwestern duo of Ohio and Iowa have effectively voted in tandem with one another since 2008. They backed Barack Obama in that election, and then again in 2012, before then voting for Republican Donald Trump by 8 to 9 point margins in both 2016 and 2020. Iowa has shifted further to the right than any other state since 2012, while Ohio ranks 5th in that regard. Down in Florida, Trump won by 3.4% in 2020, making it one of just 8 states where he actually did better in that election than in 2016. Florida voted 7.5 points to the right of the national popular vote in 2020, the most it has in either direction since 1988. And then more recently in the 2022 midterms, Republican incumbents Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio were both re-elected by landslide margins, 19 and 16 points respectively. Currently, Trump leads by 8 points right now, according to 538. And finally, all the way down here in Texas, 40 electoral votes, the 2nd largest prize after California. Although it was considered a vulnerable state for Trump by some pollsters and experts due to its recent demographic trends, Trump managed to hold Texas with 52.1% of the votes in 2020, roughly the same percentage he carried it with in 2016. Biden did improve on Hillary Clinton's 2016 vote share, though, by 3.2%, giving him the largest percentage in the state by a Democratic presidential candidate since 1976. And Trump's 5.6-point margin of victory in 2020 was also the narrowest for a Republican since 1996. That said, the concern for Democrats is that they may have peaked too early here. They did receive the turnout bombs they were hoping for in major metro regions, as you see here, but Trump significantly improved his numbers among Hispanic voters in South Texas, specifically down in the Rio Grande Valley, which saw the strongest shift of any geographical region towards Trump in the entire U.S. outside of Florida in 2020. Trump does lead by double digits right now, according to polling averages from 538, a substantial shift considering that Biden polled within around 1 to 2 points of Trump headed into Election Day in 2020. Now, with those likely Trump states out of the way, for the purposes of this video, where we are trying to determine the 3 states that he must win to reach 270 electoral votes, it would not make any sense for me to name any of the states that he won in 2020, given that he lost by a substantial electoral college margin. He'll need to at minimum carry the states that he won, as well as add several more to his coalition. And so that means that North Carolina, which Trump carried by 1.5 points in 2020, will go in the lean Republican column here. It's hard to picture a scenario in which Trump loses the Tar Heel states, which has voted Republican in 3 consecutive presidential races, yet somehow flips a bunch of states elsewhere to reach 270. That is just very, very unlikely to happen. North Carolina is almost certain to vote to the right of every other state here not yet rated on this map, as Trump has consistently led by around 5 to 10 points in the polls all cycle long. We can also follow that logic on the other side. Let's label New Mexico as likely Democrat, then Minnesota as lean Democrat, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, the Commonwealth of Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine statewide contest as well. The Trump campaign is going to need to make some very important choices about where to hold rallies, run ads, and knock on doors over the coming months, all in an effort to optimize for 270 electoral votes. No more, no less. Just like he's not going to waste too much time and too many resources on states where he is very likely to win, he also shouldn't target states that he is very unlikely to win. Given that Trump lost in 2020, he'll want to target the states that he has the best chance of flipping, or in other words, not go fishing for those firmly aligned with the other party. Trump did lose each of these states in 2016 and then again in 2020 by at least 7 percentage points each. Biden won New Mexico by 10 points. The Democrats have won Minnesota in 12 consecutive presidential elections. That's the longest active streak of any state, while New Hampshire and Maine, meanwhile, have each voted Democratic in 7 of the last 8 elections. Now, sure, these states may become competitive if Trump manages to win a landslide, but right now he should be operating under the assumption that this will be a close race, given the current national polls have him up by no more than a point or 2. And so with that said, he should be directing his attention to these 6 key battlegrounds: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He won them all except for Nevada in 2016 and came within 45,000 combined votes from winning the election across Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Arizona was Biden plus 0.3, Georgia Biden plus 0.2, and Wisconsin Biden plus 0.6. Again, had he won those 3 states, he would be serving a second term right now. That said, looking ahead to 2024, as things currently stand, Trump leads in the electoral vote count with 235 to 225. Any combination of wins in 3 out of Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin would result in him eclipsing 270 electoral votes. So let's go ahead now and pick the combination of 3 states that Trump should spend more time on than any others. The first state of the 6 remaining that I believe should be the top priority for Republicans in 2024 is Pennsylvania. A continuously developing storyline here so far this cycle has been Trump's strength in the Sun Belt relative to the Rust Belt. The former president has consistently maintained a lead outside of the margin of error in Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, and North Carolina for that matter, while in contrast, the current polls show him up just about half a point in Pennsylvania, and then Biden leading narrowly in Wisconsin and Michigan. And that's important to note because theoretically, all Biden needs to do is sweep the Rust Belt trio to reach exactly 270 electoral votes. So with that said, the first state that I think Trump should target more so than any other is Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. We know that Trump has to win one of these 3 Rust Belt states, and Pennsylvania is not only the largest prize with 19 electoral votes, but he has consistently polled better here than in either Michigan or Wisconsin. I have said it once, and I'll say it again, the Keystone State is not just in name, it is also in practice. Although Biden won by a margin of 1.2% in 2020, Pennsylvania still voted 3 points to the right of the nation as a whole, as Biden won the national popular votes by 4.5 points. Now, this marked the second consecutive election in which Pennsylvania voted to the right of the national votes, which previously it had not done since 1948. And the last time Pennsylvania voted for the losing presidential candidate was 2004. The Keystone State was also the tipping point state in the 2016 election when Trump carried it by 0.7%, and it also would have been the tipping point state in the 2020 election had Trump emerged victorious. And by tipping point state, I mean the state that supplied the final votes for a presidential candidate needed to reach 270. Now, early polling for 2024 in Pennsylvania has been a bit of a mixed bag, but the latest Decision Desk HQ and the Hill average shows Trump ahead of Biden by around 2%, currently with 49.2% to the incumbent president's 47.2%. Now, while the 538 average, meanwhile, has Trump leading by only about half a point. Ultimately, though, Pennsylvania is not only the most electorally significant battleground with its 19 electoral votes, but it's also one of, if not the most competitive and winnable states for the Trump campaign. And therefore, it is the first state that will be placed in the tilt Republican column as a state that he must win. The next state on my list would have previously been Wisconsin, actually. The Republican National Committee has already given us the earliest clues that they see Wisconsin as one of their primary targets. They selected Milwaukee as not only the location of the first GOP primary debates, but also the city to host their nomination convention this summer. Wisconsin is, after all, the only state that was decided by less than a point in both 2016 and 2020. Donald Trump carried the state's 10 electoral votes by 0.8% in 2016, before Biden then flipped it back into the Democratic corner by 0.6% in 2020. Wisconsin was officially named the tipping point state in favor of Biden in the 2020 election for the second time in its history. Yet, with that said, Biden has pulled the best here out of the key battlegrounds, and with a win in Pennsylvania, Trump does not even need Wisconsin to hit 270, so long as he wins the two Sunbelt states of Georgia and Arizona, which I would argue are 2B and 2C, either direction, in terms of importance for the Trump 2024 campaign. By placing both of these states down as tilting Republican, that lifts the former president up to 281 electoral votes. Their electoral vote combination, though, is obviously not the primary reason that I have chosen them as the next most important states after Pennsylvania. It's deeper than that. Trump currently leads Biden by 5 points in Arizona, according to DDHQ and The Hill, based on 52 polls, and by 3 points per 538. Then in Georgia, he's up by 4 points per DDHQ, according to 39 polls, and 5 per 538. Each of these leads for Trump are near a low, actually, for this cycle, as he had previously led by more like 5 to 7 points in both states. Either way, though, polling does suggest that he is definitely favored, and it would be unlikely to see him lose either Arizona or Georgia, yet flip a different state or two elsewhere. Breaking it down further, though, trend-wise, Arizona and Georgia have shifted more than 7.5 points in favor of Democrats since 2012, as Joe Biden carried both states in 2020, the first time that either of them had voted Democratic since 1996. Meanwhile, Nevada and Michigan have shifted more than 4 points to the right since 2012. Georgia and Arizona also have a higher share of college-educated residents, which further makes the current polling numbers all the more surprising. Perhaps one explanation is that Sunbelt states, particularly Arizona and Georgia, tend to be more religious and thereby socially conservative, which makes the issue of abortion less of a winning issue for Democrats than it is in the less religious Rust Belt region. It's also worth noting that Trump has made substantial gains in polls among Black and Hispanic voters, two key voter blocs that have helped Democrats become more competitive in both Arizona and Georgia over the last decade or so. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this analysis. Trump's most important states are Arizona and Georgia, as well as Pennsylvania. Fundamentally, all he needs to do is win 3 out of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. It doesn't necessarily matter which of the 3, but these are definitely the most likely and important in my mind mathematically. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Be sure to check out electionpredictionsofficial.com for my latest 2024 forecast. You can support my channel by donating via the link to my PayPal in the comments below. Check out more content from my channel here. As always, make sure to subscribe and like the video down below if you did. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.